Hey y'all, this your girl Sonja, and welcome back to She Say Sports. Today joining me is sports writer from the New Orleans Advocate, Rod Walker. Hey Rod, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, Sonja. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you for coming on with me. Just a little bit about me and Rod. Rod is actually, we went to church together, and we both graduated from Layman's Bible School. Rod was number 3 in our class, and I was number 16, and that was only because I was finishing my undergrad. And, at the same time, so that's why him and my sister, they were competing with me for some reason. I don't know why, but that's why they beat me. He was 3 and she was number 6, but, whatever. But also, I hear you laughing. What?
Well, I was just going to tell you that I was always just really competitive like that, even, ever since I was a kid. So it's just kind of been my thing, just really competitive in any class I take. And I've told this story before about the spelling bee I competed in when I was in the 2nd grade, and I lost to this girl named Celeste Brown, and I cried because I lost to a girl, and I felt like I let the boys down, and so I've always just been really competitive like that. So it's in the classroom.
But even with the Bible,
hey, anything, it don't matter. I wanted to have the best grade.
Oh,
and I don't even know why I was like that, but that's just how I was.
Well, you know what? It's a good thing in a sense. It kind of keeps you on your toes. So I guess when I made that 108 on that quiz, you and my sister was like, what? And so it was just game on after that. And I didn't even, I'm like, why? But it's cool. It's whatever. But also, Rod also, he actually introduced me to my first sports mentor, which is Wesley Peterson. He was the media director of athletics at JSU at the time when I started my intern job with JSU 7 years ago. So thank you so much for that, Rod. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, well, I don't mind helping. I like to see a lot of minorities. I mean, we don't get a lot of breaks in this industry, and anything I can do to ever help, I'm always, willing to do that because I just know how hard it is and how few of us it is. I cover a lot of games, and I'm sitting in press boxes a lot of times, and a lot of times I'm the only black person in there, and it's just kind of really weird to see that. I mean, we're in 2020, and it's just good for us to kind of get our foot in the door in that industry because, I mean, we need our stories told the way we want them to be told. So I think that's
absolutely
a good thing.
I totally agree with that. I just thought about something, and I'm going to get on to why we're here. But remember when I was I had just moved back to Mississippi, and the company I was with at the time, my boss, she loved Deuce McAllister.
Yeah.
And I went on social media one night because she wanted to meet him, and I was like, anybody know how I can get in touch with Deuce McAllister? And Rod, actually, you tweeted him, didn't you?
Probably. Or I may have had, I don't know how long ago was it because I may have.
This was in 2010. So
okay, yeah, that was before I had moved. Yet. So, yeah, I was still there. Yeah. Yeah, I probably just tweeted him or something, yeah.
Well, Rod got in touch with him for me, and we surprised Hattie. I mean, she was a huge, and I say it was because she passed away from cancer a couple of years ago. She was in remission at that time when she met Deuce. And it was for her birthday, and she was just blown away. And it was so sweet for him to actually do that. So, again, thanks again, Rod. I just thought about that.
Yeah, I get a chance to hang out with Deuce a lot here because, he does the Saints. He's a radio broadcast for the Saints games, and so he's at practice and stuff. So I see him all the time, but it's just amazing that, Deuce has been out of the league for like 12, 13 years, but you go to a Saints game and you still see those Deuce McAllister's jerseys, and whenever they show him, they show an old highlight. I mean, the crowd is still Deuce. They do that still.
That is so cool.
And even when even at practice, like during training camp, when the fans get a chance to come to practice, Deuce is like just a legend in New Orleans, and he's still the Saints' all-time leading rusher, and they really, really love Deuce here. He's probably one of the most beloved players to ever play for that team. Obviously Drew Brees at the top, but Deuce is not far from it.
He's not far from it, yeah.
As far as the way the fans love him, yeah.
please tell him I said hello next time you talk to him. I know, probably be later on, when football camp starts maybe, but
yeah,
I'm sure he'll remember me because of that situation. He definitely remembers Hattie. Well, Rod, tell the listeners a little bit about yourself. Well, what I haven't already told.
Well, I graduated from Mississippi State in engineering, and I worked in that field for about 6 or 7 years, and wasn't happy and decided to make a career change. So as I was engineering, I was working part-time at the Clarion Ledger, and I was just sort of taking scores over the telephone. People would call in the results from games, and I was just kind of typing in the scores. And eventually let me start writing, and, just kind of on the side started writing, just freelancing basically while I was still doing engineering. And around 2001, 2002, I think it was 2001, the Clarion Ledger started a weekly paper out in Madison called the Madison County Herald. Came out 3 times a week, a really small paper, but they needed a sports writer full time, and I decided to give it a chance. And I mean, it was a huge pay cut, but I wanted to, just something I wanted to do, so I ended up doing it, and so I stayed there for 2 years, and then I moved to the Clarion Ledger in 2003, I guess, and stayed there for 10 years, and then I, found a job in New Orleans. So I basically had to start completely over, but it ended up working out for me. I mean, I'm probably the best decision I ever made.
That's cool.
So I have no regrets about it at all. Just kind of,
and
I want to follow my passion. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. No, you were saying you were following your passion.
Yeah, I mean, it was just something I always had a passion for sports and a passion for writing. And, I mean, I'm like most kids. I grew up, wishing I could have made it to the NBA or the Major League Baseball or something. And I played baseball in high school. I mean, obviously, I wasn't good enough to be a pro, so the next best thing for me was to write about it. And so it's, just given me a good opportunity to do something I enjoy.
That's cool. So you were saying writing was always a passion of yours, but did you feel like you had to go in engineering because?
Well, I think it's kind of funny to me that when you're 18 years old, they expect you to know what you want to do with your life, and you really don't know when you're 18.
Absolutely. You really don't.
And, but I remember I was pretty good in math in school, and, teacher was like, oh, you should be an engineer, and, you make a lot of money. So that's just sort of what I majored in, but I was never like a kid who was good with the science projects and all that stuff. So engineering probably wasn't for me anyway, but I got through it. I mean, it was tough. I mean, one of my biggest regrets, I guess, is that I didn't just major in journalism, right out of, right in college. I could have got some experience in college doing it. And, so I started off about 8-9 years behind because I didn't change careers till I got, late 20s, early 30s or whatever it was.
Right. That's cool. And what I was going to mention earlier, Clarion Ledger, for the ones that are outside of Mississippi, that is a Jackson, Mississippi. That's our newspaper in Jackson. So I was just trying to clear that up for some of the listeners. But now, get into what we're here for. Unless you were under a rock, everyone knew that the docuseries, The Last Dance, was moved up from June to April 19th due to the postponing of sports because of COVID-19. And that first parts 1 and 2 had 6.1 million viewers. So apparently, everybody knew what was going on. We was excited about it. I was actually thrilled, not only because I wanted to see something about sports, but because I'm a Bulls and Michael Jordan fan. Bulls fan since I was 5, Jordan fan since I was 12. And, I was there during the lean years with the Bulls when we didn't win anything to when we won our first ring. And as you know, the Bulls went on to win 5 more rings, building a dynasty that is still being talked about today, hence this docuseries. The docuseries was named The Last Dance because of Hall of Famer and former coach of Bulls, Phil Jackson, regarding the last season with the Bulls. Rod, what was your take on parts 1 and 2 of this docuseries?
I think the main thing for me, and again, I mean, I grew up in that era just like you did. So, I mean, a lot of this stuff we were familiar with. But I think just the biggest thing that jumped out to me was just some of the details of the the differences that Scottie Pippen had with management and just his whole, just his whole contract situation and just how he sort of got a deal that didn't look favorable to him when you go back and look at it because he was so productive. But he was a guy who was really. You look at his background and his large family in Arkansas, and so you understand why he accepted that deal. But I think just the intricacies of that deal is that really just kind of stood out to me.
Speaking of that deal, and we talked about this offline, I believe, after part 1 and 2. A lot of people I noticed they were posting about MJ should have did more to get Scottie a better contract. However, if you know the history of MJ's salary with the Bulls, he didn't make any money until the last 2 years with the Bulls. Remember, MJ was MJ. He had a lot of endorsement contracts, and that's how he made the bulk of his money during the early mid-'90s. So, Scottie negotiated without any leverage. He was negotiating with outdated information, and his deal was $18 million over 5 years. But because the Bulls had him sign it early, and it was during the 91 NBA Finals, this allowed the Bulls to front-load that deal. And it put most of that $1.6 million of his 90-91 salary, at the beginning of that. And it's just, the $18 million was then spread over seven seasons. So, his money came up real short. Over 5 years, that's $3.6 million. And when you spread it over 7, you lose about $1 million. So, do you really think MJ could have done more on Scottie's behalf?
I don't think he could have, just because of just the way the Bulls front office operated. They were sort of known for not being a team that budged on contracts. Once you signed it, they didn't do a lot of renegotiating, and that was Scottie's deal. He just. He signed that long-term deal, and they just weren't going to renegotiate. But I think they should have, just because of how productive he was. You just look at how well. This team was a dynasty, and Scottie was a big part of why they were a dynasty. And you just look at the year when Jordan walked away. Pippen was third in the MVP voting that year, and that was. That tells you how valuable he was to that team. So. I think management should have done the right thing and just said, okay, yeah, we kind of lowballed you. You deserve more, and he could have stepped up and did more, but that's just not how they operated, and we see how that ended up playing out.
Right, and then we noticed even the Bulls owner Jerry Reinsdorf mentioned that he told Scottie it wasn't a good deal, and him being the owner, don't you think he could have did more, like helping him change that? Yeah,
he definitely could have, and he's. And I don't know the dynamics of, him and Krause, I don't know why he didn't step in and say, okay, yeah, he signed his contract, but we got to do the right thing. I don't know why that didn't happen. It probably should have, and maybe he didn't want to step on Krause's toes. I don't know, but it's pretty amazing to me that they didn't get something worked out there.
Right, that's true. So do you, with that said, with the contracts and everything, when Scottie, had his surgery, he had it pretty late. He could have had it, right after the season was over and was ready for the 97-98 beginning of the season. But, he was on the injured list. Do you think that was cool what he did, not being able to start? Do you think, was he being a team player, or was he just looking out for himself at that point?
I think at that point he was just looking out for himself, and I get it. And I'm a person who always think that players should look out for themselves. They're the ones who are drawing that revenue and making these owners rich. So I was cool with him looking out for himself. Yeah, it was probably a little selfish if you look at it that way, but at the end of the day, you're the one out there busting your butt, and if you feel like you're not being valued or appreciated, that's sort of how people are. I'd probably be the same way if I felt like I wasn't getting what I deserved. And, obviously it's a different job that I'm doing, but I definitely understood why Scottie felt that way. And, he basically said, he wasn't going to give up his whole summer rehabbing, but he just let it spill over into the season. And And, I mean, you saw that the Bulls came out of the gate that year. I mean, they struggled coming out of the gate without him. I think he was kind of proving his point.
He made his
that's
point.
What happened. He made his point, yeah.
He absolutely did. And I'm like you. I'm glad he was a little selfish because he proved his point. You know, I make a lot of difference in this team. And like you said, I mean, at the beginning of the season, they were struggling. They struggled pretty bad because he was not there. And even with MJ being there, they struggled. And so, you know, I really wish they had did right by him. You know, he even worked for the Bulls for a while, and, you know, they fired him. I mean, it's just, I don't know. That it's kind of, they had some type of relationship, you know, because it's just like, I don't know if I would go work for a company after they, you know, the way they treated me 20 years earlier, but I guess it was water under the bridge. Krause was gone, and, you know, he was hoping it was going to be, you know, a better deal with him working not on the floor, but, you know, as you know, a coaching. Yeah, you know what I'm trying to say.
And at that point, Scotty had made a lot of money, you know, when he went to Houston and Portland. So he ended up, you know, he ended up really getting paid. I mean, he made up for it on the back end. So I think at that point, Scott was willing to, you know, swallow his pride and go back and work for the, you know, the franchise that he basically helped build into a dynasty.
Absolutely, that's true. So yeah, so you know, I'm glad things worked out for him. But you know, speaking of the front office, throughout and Scotty actually, throughout part 1 and 2 of the docuseries, we saw some of the team members, especially MJ, teasing or making fun of Jerry Krause, which was the GM of the Bulls. You know, I know boys will be boys, but we know that the teasing had a lot to do with the tension they had with the front office, in particular with Krause. I think the worst was when Scotty belittled him and cursed him on the bus, even though we didn't see it, you know, they talked about it in the docuseries about how bad Scotty, you know, like just, and, you know, just really went in on him in front of everybody. Do you think all of that was done to Krause by the players was warranted?
No, it definitely wasn't warranted. I mean, you don't want to see anybody get picked on. And, I mean, you look at Krause, I mean, you could tell he's probably a guy who's been picked on his whole life. And that part of the docuseries surprised me a little bit just because I never really heard that side and hadn't really seen that side of Scotty.
Me
you know,
either.
Like, you know, it just didn't, you know, it just didn't seem like the Scotty that we knew. But it just lets you know how bad the tension was between both parties. And so yeah, and that was, like I said, that was a big surprise for me.
It was a big surprise for me too to also see Michael teasing him like he did. You know, it was, you know, because, you know, first of all, they always try to paint Mike as just serious, you know, all he think about is basketball. But for him to do that, I was like, wow, you know, why would you, you know, I understand the tension between you guys, but that's still your boss. And I felt a little sorry for him because he really wanted to, you know, he wanted to belong.
Right, he wanted to fit in. Yeah. And, yeah, I agree. He wanted to fit in. And he is your boss. And to me, I don't really care who my boss is or whatever I do. I'm just not, if that's a person that's responsible for my checks, I'm just not going to treat him like that. But I know that, I don't know, it's basketball and it's a different career choice, I guess. And maybe I don't know how that dynamic started with them teasing him. Like, I don't know the very beginning of it. And it probably started off small and just kind of, you know, over the years, you just kind of you just keep doing it, I guess. And that's how it ended up playing out.
Exactly.
But it was weird to see them talking to him like that.
I know. It was odd. And I was just like, wow. And, you know, I always, as I was watching it, I was seeing, you know, like you mentioned, you know, he just wanted to fit in. I pictured him as this kid wanting to play sports when he was younger, you know, probably was too short, didn't have the talent. And then when you grow up, you become the GM of the Chicago Bulls. Whereas on the flip side, you have MJ, who dealt with the bull crap, no pun intended, with the Bulls front office. And when he retired from playing basketball with the Wizards, he became the president of operations with the Wizards, and then, as we know, became an owner of the Hornets. And I guess in his mind, I'm a player. I know how it feels to deal with the front office, and I guess he wanted to be a voice for the players in a sense. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think that's what happened. And I don't know what Mike. I call him Mike like we hang out or something. But I don't know what.
Well, in my mind, we have. I agree.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I mean, so he's transitioned over into the front office, and now they haven't had a whole lot of success, as you know.
Yeah.
So I think it kind of shows you just how different those two jobs are. I mean, playing basketball is a little different from running a team, and that success doesn't automatically just transfer over just because you played. So
that's true. And the front office of the Bulls have always just kind of left a bad taste in my mouth. And even the last 10 to 15 years, it's like they're trying to fail and probably trying to get number one drafts like they were doing after drafting MJ. You notice in the Docuseries, Michael mentioned, it's like they're wanting to lose so we can get, a draft. And to me, that's not really a smart strategy to become a winning team, but that's how they felt like they needed to do. And it's just, I don't know. I'm still kind of baffled about what's going on with the Bulls right now. We had Jimmy Butler, we had D Rose, and, I was thinking things were about to turn around, but, with injuries with D Rose and then, the trade in the Jimmy, it just I don't know. I'm just really disappointed with it.
And you look at the front office of the Bulls, even back when they fired Thibodeau, I mean, it was some of the same issues almost. It's almost like Paxson and Garth Farmer wanted some of that same respect. I mean, not respect. I think they wanted some of the credit. And so I think it's some of the same things that happened 20 years earlier that kind of resurfaced for the Bulls. And, hopefully they get it right and get it back together. I mean, it was a team, and I mean, it's a city that's passionate about basketball when it's doing well. So, I love to see Chicago get back rolling again.
I do too. It took us 25 years to get our first ring, and now we're in year 23 since we won our last ring. So hopefully something will happen soon. I would really, really hope we get back on track. But you never know. You never know. It may. I don't know. But Jerry Krause, I want to stick with him for a little bit. He was very instrumental in bringing Scotty, Horace Grant, Tony Kukoc. He traded Bill Cartwright for Dennis Rodman and Luke Longley to the Bulls. And, he did a lot of stuff, but without him doing those, making those moves, we may not have the dynasty that we have today. However, he's also very instrumental in trying to tear down the very same team by trying to make trades and only giving Phil Jackson one more year with the team. I mean, you heard the saying, if it's not broke, don't fix it. And it wasn't broke. I mean, there could have been some changes, but do you agree they could have possibly won a couple more rings?
I think when you got those two cornerstones of Jordan and Pippen, I think you definitely, you could have made a few more runs at it. But I also think a lot of times especially when people in front office have sort of built something from the very bottom, and they get it to where the Bulls were. I mean, it's probably the greatest dynasty maybe in any sport as far as just that little run they had. That 6 titles in 8 years. So I think he just felt like he could, tear it down and do it all over again. I mean, I think because they made it the way they were rolling there in the 90s, they made it look sort of easy. And I think they made it look so easy that he probably said, "Oh, you know what? I can do this again." And I think that's why he was willing to tear it down so quickly when it wasn't, like you said, it wasn't broken. And obviously, I mean, he had some ego issues because we know that he didn't really like Phil getting all the credit. I think he wanted some of that credit. So I just think he wanted to, find his, let's see if I can go find the next Phil Jackson and the next Michael or Scotty or whatever. I think he just thought he could do it again because, again, I think it was just so easy for him the first time.
That's interesting. Yeah, you're right. And so you do agree, and I agree with you. You think it was personal, him trying to break up the team and getting rid of Phil.
Yeah, I mean, I think he had his, he just wanted to do it again. I think he had his next guy picked out, and he just wanted to show people that it was more him than, it wasn't just those players and the coach. That he could do
it. Well, I don't think it would have lightning wouldn't have struck twice that quick. I really don't think it would have, but you never know.
And it didn't. So I mean, his plan didn't work. So
yeah, it definitely was not going to work. Scotty, we see him as Robin to MJ's Batman, one of the best dynamic duos in basketball. And I love the fact that the part 2 of the docuseries was used to highlight Scotty. He was an amazing player, and he should always get praise for that. Now, what was interesting to me, and I definitely didn't know, was Scotty was coming for MJ's spot on the Bulls. And I guess, coming from Central Arkansas and being the star, he wanted to stay the star. And, I guess it's like, how kids, they're big star, the big football star in high school, everybody want to be him, everybody want to be his girl, everybody, want to just be his friend or whatever. But he goes to, like, Notre Dame, and it's everybody's a star there. They're coming, all of those stars, and they're bigger than you.
Right.
And, it was just interesting to me when I heard that. The first thing that came to my mind, I was like, how could he think he could take Michael's place when, and I'm not saying nobody could have took his place. I'm not saying that, but I'm like, how could he say that when he, could barely, at that point, when they were in the, they made it to the Eastern Champ finals against, not the finals, the Eastern Conference games against the Pistons, and he was having those migraines. And I was like, you can't even, he was so stressed about the games, and so I was, when that happened, I was like, oh my God, I think we made a mistake with this dude, because I'm like, what is up with him? And at that point, I was, I'm very young. I had never experienced a migraine. So now that I had my first one maybe 6 years ago, and I get it now, stress from a job, and I guess stress from playing the Pistons, it was too much for him. So
yeah, I've never had a migraine. I don't think I have anyway. And people say if you have one, you'll know. Right. But yeah, I mean, at the time, I was the same way as you. I was like, is that why he's not playing? And at that time, I don't think I hadn't become a big Scotty fan yet.
Mm-hmm.
At that
Me
point.
either.
So I was like, man, this dude's whipping out with a headache. I was caught of a headache. And
right, that's what I did. I did.
So, but I mean, he eventually evolved. I mean, I just think, it's a process for all these guys, and you have to grow up and go through some adversities to get to where they get, and I think that's what. I think Scotty probably needed to go through those steps to get to where he is and become the player that he became.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And even when he was going through those steps to get to who he was, I think he finally was like, you know what, this dude is the star. I don't have a problem with, working with him. I don't have to take his spot. I have my own spot. And when he realized he had his own spot, that's when they started to flow. You know what I'm saying? It was
right. That's what made them click. Both of them had to accept who they were. I think Michael realized that he didn't have to do everything, that, he could give some of this stuff over to Scotty and let Scotty defend the best players or just whatever he needs to do. And I think all that sort of made them who they were. Everybody knew their role, and they knew if they needed a basket, they could probably count on Michael to score. But, they just knew their roles. I think that's when the team sort of turned the corner, I think.
Absolutely. I'm so glad that they did. So, I know, Rod, you want them to play the entire series in one day. I'm kind of glad they're breaking it up because, I want to have something to look forward to, and we don't have anything else to do. So, I'm looking forward to next Sunday with Dennis Rodman.
Yeah, and I know I put it out there about I wish we could do it all in one night, and that was just because I was so excited about that first 2 episodes, and you didn't want it to end, and we haven't had sports in a month, and we just all just starving for it, and
right.
you have to credit ESPN for being smart enough to bring this series, to move the date up so we could go ahead and see it. I mean, and I think you talked about the ratings earlier, and the ratings were good. They were great.
Mm-hmm.
But if this had happened in June or July after the finals, they still would have been good. They still would have been great, but I don't know if they would have been as good. But right now, like, I know people who aren't even really sports fans who are watching it, and I don't know if those people would have watched it just in June, July. I think there's just like nothing. There's nothing going on, and people are just starving for something. So everybody's tuned in. And one of the things I really like about this series is some of the younger people who, I mean, they've heard stories of Jordan, but they didn't really get a chance.
They don't know about it.
They don't know it. They don't know it. So I think I get more excited to see them learning all this stuff that, I mean, we've seen all this stuff. We know how these games and series are going to play out. But just see these younger kids, like, get to actually see it, and it's just really good. And something else that we didn't really talk about the series, but just the music that they've used so far has been really good. I mean, they used, LL's I'm Bad and Eric B. and Rakim's I Ain't No Joke. It's just been like, yeah, I mean, and they played them like the perfect time. It's just everything. They've done a really good job with it. Yeah.
I taught middle school choir in Dallas, Texas, back in 06, 07. And I mean, Rod, there's the two things I love. Three things: God, music, and sports, in that order. And I was a music teacher, but I talked about, sports in my class, and I mentioned Michael Jordan at that time, and they was like, some of the kids was like, who is that? And I was like, oh my God. And I didn't know what to do because I could not believe. I'm like, you don't know Michael Jordan? I mean, yet alone, they didn't even know certain people in music, but it amazed me that black kids, because I taught on the corner of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, so I was in the hood.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe, of course they knew, Kobe, and that was their savior as far as in basketball. But I was just, and I'm just talking to them, and I'm like, get with your dad, and and let him ask him about Michael Jordan. I couldn't believe it, but I'm so.
And that wasn't even that long ago.
I mean,
it seems like, and I know the older we get, the more the years, the faster they fly by. But we think back to that. I mean, that seems like just yesterday to us. Like
just yesterday.
Yeah. So I know when we were growing up, I mean, people would talk about Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain. I mean, we knew of them. At least we knew the names.
Right.
But some of the kids now don't.
We weren't born when Bill Russell was playing. I mean, Michael retired in 2000. This was 2006, so they were middle school kids.
Right.
So
yes, that's what I like about this series is just these people getting a chance to learn about them and know about all this stuff, and just that's the best part of this to me.
Yeah, me too, Mike. I mean, Lord, I didn't call you Mike. Me too. Anyway, I don't want to think if nobody think I'd be talking to him. Me too, Rod. And it's just like watching the game. Like you said, even though we know what happened, I still get chills watching them because to me, that's when basketball was basketball. It's not the same. To me, it's very soft now. To me. And
the game has definitely changed, and I see people saying how soft it is now, and I agree with them that it is soft. But I do think that sometimes there are like some videos on YouTube of just some of the brawls from back in the 80s.
Yes.
It's like I don't even know if I would. I mean, it's kind of cool to see that's how they used to play, but I don't know if I really enjoy basketball if they were brawling like that still. I mean, because players are just so much bigger and stronger and faster, and I don't know. I don't know. I can't imagine the game being played like that still. And a big part of that, though, is back then, like, the NBA is not making, I mean, it wasn't making the money back then that it's making now.
It is now, right.
So they have to protect these stars. I mean, they can't have Steph Curry going through the lane and, well, I can't think of a player on the, and they can't have Zion Williamson, like, clobbering Steph every time he come in. They got to protect these guys because these guys are bringing in so much money. So I think that's why the game's changed so much. I mean, I think it's probably for the better because if these guys are getting hurt and missing all these games, I mean, it would just, NBA would lose so much money, and I think that's why they had to. That's part of the reason I think the rules have changed so much and the game's gotten softer.
Well, and speaking of, you're saying the NBA will lose a lot of money if they get hurt, and I understand that. But what I have a problem with are some of the stars
Sitting out.
That pisses me. I'm sorry. Well, yeah, I can say that. That pisses me off because what about the kids that parents, scrounged up the money to get you a ticket just to see your hero, and they're sitting down not because they're hurt, but because they need to rest. When you signed up to be an NBA player, you knew it was 82 games. So I need you to play 82 games if you're not sick, if you're not, I don't understand that. That bothers me.
Yeah, it's a big problem, and I mean, especially, I'm here in New Orleans, and those teams in the Eastern Conference don't come to New Orleans but once a year. So if there's a chance you want to see Giannis play, he's only coming once, so you don't need him to sit out because these people are counting on the sit. That's the ticket I'm buying because I want to see Giannis play. And if he's sitting out, and it's a big problem. And I think the NBA they're trying to address it, but I mean it's so hard to fix it because anybody can fake a little. I sprung my ankle, just any little thing, and you can kind of kind of beat the system. So it's definitely a problem, and they need to fix it. And hopefully one day they will. I don't know what kind of, they have to have some kind of punishment, I guess, for teams doing it. But it's just so hard to monitor, like I said, because of these little knick-knack injuries that people can say they have.
That's true. Well, the next two next 3 and 4 part series of the Last Dance, they will be highlighting Dennis Rodman. I'm so freaking looking forward to that. Now, when he first became a Bull, I was not happy because he was a bad boy from the Pistons, and I didn't trust him. And I know that actually may sound weird. I thought he was going to try to sabotage the Bulls. And I know that, it doesn't make any sense, but I wasn't alone in that thought. A lot of Bulls fans felt that way. What are you looking forward to in the next part?
Oh, definitely, Dennis. I mean, to me, Dennis, you could do, and they've done the 30 for 30 on Dennis. So I mean, we sort of know his story, but it'll be interesting to see just how the Bulls players, just kind of what they thought about him, and just because Dennis he was like a rock star,
He really was.
I mean, he wasn't as big as Michael, but I mean, he was, as far as like the entertainment side of the basketball, I mean, he was up there, like really up there. I mean, he was, so I'm really I'm really looking forward to just seeing his story and how he intertwined with him, going for that third title and that second three-peat.
Yeah. So well, I mean, Rod, I'm thinking I may have to bring you back to discuss. To discuss probably this whole series. What you think?
Oh, that's fine. I'm all for it. I mean, I'm enjoying the series, and I love to talk about it, and just hear your views on what you think about it too. So I'm all for it.
Okay, great. That's all I need to hear. So, well, good. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, and tell the listeners how they can follow you on social media.
On Twitter, I'm at Rod Walker Nola, and on Instagram, I'm at rwalker1906.
Okay, and
that's it.
Okay, and you can reach me, She Say Sports on Facebook, She Say Sports 23, as in Michael Jordan, on Instagram. And that is my show for today. Thanks again, Rod. And until then, this is Sonja with Tuesday Sports, and I'll see you on the radio.